McGraw-Hill Audio presents Jack Welch and the G.E. Way. Management Insights and Leadership Secrets of the Legendary CEO. Written by Robert Slater. Read by Michael Prichard. Part 1. Act like a leader, not a manager. Find great ideas, exaggerate them, and spread them like hell around the business with the speed of light. Chapter 1. Embrace change. Don't fear it. Too many managers are afraid to change. Too many managers believe that standing still is the best business strategy, probably because it's the safest. Jack Welch says it's nonsense to fear change. Welch, the tomorrow-driven leader, loves change. He finds it exciting, daring, imaginative. Thinking about change, he argues, keeps everyone alert and on their toes. Change, he notes, is a big part of the reality of business. Take the business environment. It is constantly changing. New competitors, new products. Any business that ignores these facts is doomed to collapse. In 1980, the year before Welch took over GE, the company had been doing very well, or so most people thought. It had sales of $25 billion, with profits of $1.5 billion, and was hailed as a model organization by many of the popular management textbooks used by business schools across the country. Still, the chairman of GE was worried. Perhaps he didn't believe the textbooks. He worried that without some major changes in its structure, its products, and its size, GE would falter. He knew that the business environment was becoming more competitive. He believed that these changes could spell big trouble for GE, and that the most effective way for a company to deal with a constantly evolving business environment was to adjust and adapt as required. His task would not be easy, for, as he liked to point out, change has no constituency. He would find it difficult to rally huge numbers of employees behind his plans. Few people in business find change enjoyable. The very idea of tweaking a tradition-bound company like General Electric seemed absurd to many people, but not to Jack Welch. In contrast to almost everyone else, he understood the perils that confronted large corporations like GE during the 1970s and 1980s. Others preferred to dismiss those perils as minor blips on the screen. And why not? By ignoring the warning signals, they could keep their heads in the sand, and they wouldn't have to change their ways. Nonetheless, high-tech industries and global competitors were popping up, challenging GE for sales and market share. They were producing products of ever-improving quality at higher standards of productivity. And all of these changes were occurring at a more and more rapid pace. Jack Welch not only recognized that such changes could not be avoided, he embraced them with his usual intensity. The changes gave him the chance to create a new General Electric, to forge a company that was more in tune with the evolving business environment. As he studied the company, one thing became abundantly clear. The kind of change that GE required was not a Band-Aid-type quick fix. No, in order to make General Electric truly competitive, he would have to put it through more dramatic and far-reaching changes than any major American business enterprise had ever undertaken. And nothing intimidated him, not even the screaming and hollering of junior GE executives, who argued that the company was in fine shape. He was sure he was right, and that was enough. Explaining what the situation had been like when he took GE in 1981, Welch focused on two dominant trends: the high inflation of the late 1970s and the Asian threat that confronted every GE business. It was a reminder that we'd better get a lot better faster. So I guess my message in our company was, the game is going to change, and change drastically. And we had to get a plan, a program together, to deal with a decade that was totally different. The Japanese had moved since the late 60s and early 70s from poor quality and low prices to low price and high quality. And their plants and their quality and their discipline were overwhelming us in some businesses. A process that had no name. No one had tried to make such monumental changes before. No one had dared. The changes that Jack Welch pioneered in the early 1980s were so new that the process had no name. Today we call it restructuring. Welch saw the crisis coming when no one else did. Only a handful of General Electric's 350 business units were leaders in their markets: lighting, power systems, motors. Only 3 GE products had a reasonably good share of the export market: plastics, gas turbines, aircraft engines. Of these, only gas turbines enjoyed market leadership overseas. Still, deceptively, GE's balance sheets in the 1970s seemed to glow with health. Welch sensed a different truth, a different reality. He knew all too well that manufacturing in the United States was becoming less and less profitable. Yet, as late as 1970, fully 80% of General Electric's earnings came from its traditional electrical and electronic manufacturing businesses. The company had financial achievements, to be sure, especially in plastics, medical systems, and financial services. But these businesses contributed only 1/3 of GE's total 1981 earnings. In addition, a number of GE's businesses, aircraft engines was the best example, often consumed more cash than they generated. For decades, the United States had dominated the most important markets of the world economy: steel, textiles, shipbuilding, television, calculators, automobiles. So few American business leaders noticed when others, especially the Japanese, began to steal customers by seducing them with higher quality products bearing cheaper price tags. Smokestack America was deteriorating. The most telling sign came in 1982, when the steel industry lost $3.2 billion. Meanwhile, the Japanese had gobbled up 20% of the American steel market. And what was occurring in steel was happening in the car industry as well. The American economy looked increasingly unhealthy by the early 1980s. Inflation, for example, which had been only 3.4% in 1971, soared to 18% in March 1980. And while the United States still led the world in productivity, its lead had been deteriorating steadily since the 1960s. By the summer of 1981, the country was on the brink of recession. To meet competition around the world, the United States had to become more productive, more aggressive, and fast. Yet few American companies were exporting their products. Only 1% of American companies accounted for 80% of the nation's exports. Why not just stand pat? Jack Welch could have made do. He could have gambled that GE, the 115-year-old icon of business, would continue to sell its products no matter how much the market environment shifted ground. He could have argued that General Electric was so strong that it could withstand the economic ups and downs. But Welch knew better, and it wasn't in him to ignore the truth. GE executives scoffed at Welch and insisted that no change was needed. GE employees greeted Welch with disdain, disbelief, often with outright fear. Why tamper with a good thing? Why play with fire? Why was he intent on fixing something that wasn't broke? General Electric was doing just fine. After all, it had generated enormous sales and profits. Yet Welch followed his gut instinct. I could see a lot of GE businesses becoming lethargic. American business was inwardly focused on the bureaucracy, which was right for its time, but the times were changing rapidly. Change was occurring at a much faster pace than business was reacting to it. An important building block of Welch's new strategy was weeding out certain businesses, keeping only those that could dominate their markets. From now on, a GE business would have to be first or second in its market. If the company could not bring flagging businesses up to speed, it would close or sell them. That new policy positioned GE for solid growth throughout the 1980s and early 1990s. There were many other changes as well, and they marked only the beginning of what Welch would do to improve the company. Throughout his 17 years in the job, Jack Welch has embraced change as a fruitful and necessary business strategy. It's okay to acquire. GE had traditionally advocated that it was better to nurture one's own business than to acquire from outside. In the mid-1980s, Welch took a dramatic step, reversing this time-honored tradition. On December 12, 1985, General Electric purchased RCA, the communications giant, which included the NBC television network, its jewel in the crown, for $6.28 billion. At the time, General Electric was the 9th largest U.S. industrial firm. RCA was second among the nation's service firms. Together, GE and RCA formed a new corporate power with sales of $40 billion, placing it 7th on the Fortune 500. James Bowman, then head of Crotonville, GE's Leadership Development Institute, called the merger the biggest countercultural step Jack Welch's GE had ever taken. Welch took that as a compliment. He wanted to develop General Electric's highest growth businesses, and he intended to do whatever it took. If buying outside businesses helped the company, he would do it. After the GE-RCA merger, General Electric expected to obtain 80% of its earnings from service and technology businesses, helping to fulfill one of Welch's original goals from the early 1980s. 2 years later, in 1987, Welch, the driver of change, took another countercultural step. He discarded one of GE's most cherished businesses and acquired a company in the medical diagnostics field. For some time, GE's $3 billion a year consumer electronics division, the leading maker of television sets and video recording equipment in the United States, had been in trouble. Welch understood that it would be mission impossible to turn the business, then ranked 4th in the world market, into a first or second-rank player. GE had to get out of consumer electronics and to place its resources behind something that had the potential to become a market leader. So, in June 1987, GE turned the division over to Thomson S.A., the largest of the electronics companies. In return, GE acquired the Thomson CGR medical imaging unit, which had been selling about $750 million of X-ray and other diagnostic machines in Europe each year. This gave GE an entree into the European medical diagnostic market. The media attacked Welch ferociously for selling a business that had seemed so quintessentially American, like apple pie or baseball, and for exporting manufacturing jobs. Welch thought the criticism made little sense. GE simply had to change. It had to strive to make its businesses market leaders if it was ever going to beat the competition. 2 years later, in 1989, the chairman embraced change once again, taking a whole new look at the way GE dealt with its workers. Having witnessed massive layoffs in the 1980s, and still fearing for their jobs and their futures, they were in desperate need of a confidence booster. Welch came up with just what they needed. Until 1989, Welch and his colleagues had doubted there was much to learn from their employees, believing instead that the workers, like drones, were just supposed to carry out management's decisions. They were not supposed to show initiative. After all, they were workers, not managers. But eventually the chairman began to realize that GE's employees were a vital and unending source of new and imaginative ideas. allowing them to have input in the day-to-day operations of the company could improve business and dramatically increase productivity. This approach had one more giant benefit. It could make workers, survivors of the great corporate downsizing, feel more satisfied in their jobs. Using the brain power of employees was a major change for Jack Welch and General Electric. Welch launched his workout program, designed to use those brains, putting them to work to effectively expand the level of debate throughout every corridor of the company. In doing so, GE became the first company to implement a program of this kind on such a large scale. The proof lies in the pudding. Change worked. Whether it was the change that made GE businesses leaders in their markets, or that added profitable, productive businesses to GE's family, or that tapped the brains of knowledgeable employees. Welch knew that it worked because GE's numbers were improving. He knew that it worked because by the mid-1990s, GE had become the strongest company in the nation and the most valuable company in the world, as measured in market capitalization. Even that record of achievement did not keep Welch from searching for the next major change to bring to his organization. In 1995, he took a bold new step, launching a company-wide initiative to improve the quality of General Electric's products and processes. It was bold because it tacitly admitted that GE's products and processes could stand some improvement. Once again, Welch was facing reality and embarking on change. He could have resisted change. After all, as he likes to say, GE today is a quality company. It has always been a quality company. So why not stand pat? Welch's answer? We want to be more than that. We want to change the competitive landscape by being not just better than our competitors, but by taking quality to a whole new level. We want to make our quality so special, so valuable to our customers, so important to their success, that our products become their only real value choice. Change. It may seem easy to do. All it takes is one decision from the boss, then getting employees to alter their patterns of behavior. But it sounds simpler than it is. It's not easy to discard old ways and habits and adopt new ones. In fact, it just might well be the hardest thing for anyone in business to do. Jack Welch understood how difficult change could be. But he was not dissuaded, for he viewed change as his only real chance to transform GE into the competitive enterprise he hungered for. Only through change, massive change, could GE win, and Jack Welch firmly believed in winning. He loved the way winners acted, like John Wayne heroes who weren't afraid to take on foes that made others quake in their boots. He knew that winners won because they never flinched. He felt sorry for the losers, the ones who always stuck their heads in the sand. But he wanted to be a winner, and winners weren't afraid to make changes. Chapter 2. Stop managing, start leading. Weak managers are the killers of business. They are the job killers. For a long time, the conventional wisdom in American business was that managers should do little else but keep a close eye on what their subordinates were doing. Monitor, supervise, control. A whole bureaucracy of junior and senior managers were talking only to one another, shooting memos to one another, holding high-level meetings left and right, making sure that things below, on the factory floor and everywhere else, were proceeding properly. That's all that managers were supposed to do. Not to inspire, not to give junior managers the chance to do things on their own, not to have direct contact with the men and women who actually produced the company's products. Who could argue? American corporations appeared to be doing well, or so it seemed. But Jack Welch despises these bureaucrats. He regards them as relics of the past, and Jack Welch hates the past. What is the right way to manage a huge company? More specifically, in the case of multi-business General Electric, how does one manage numerous business units and hundreds of thousands of employees? How does one manage those employees effectively so that they are as productive as possible? Is it better to be a hands-on manager or a hands-off one? Jack Welch has given a great deal of thought to these questions, and he has come to a seemingly paradoxical view. The less managing someone does, the better off the company. He dislikes the very notion of management. Most managers, in his view, overmanage. Those who overmanage help to create the bureaucratic sloth and sluggishness that kills large companies. From the very moment that he took over as head of General Electric, Welch regarded the place as a bureaucratic dinosaur. Management did too much controlling and monitoring. He decided that its leaders had to change their management styles. If he was going to get GE to successfully compete in an increasingly complex and competitive business environment, he would have to significantly alter the way the managers did their jobs. He certainly had his work cut out for him. After all, in those days, the concept of managing less by managing more was anathema to the folks in the corner offices, who were accustomed to working through the old boys' hierarchy. Welch wants to discard the term manager altogether, because it has come to mean someone who controls rather than facilitates, complicates rather than simplifies, acts more like a governor than an accelerator. Some managers, Welch says, muddle business decisions with pointless complexity and detail. They equate managing with sophistication, with sounding smarter than anyone else. They inspire no one. I dislike the traits that have come to be associated with managing: controlling, stifling people, keeping them in the dark, wasting their time on trivia and reports, breathing down their necks. You can't manage self-confidence into people. If it were up to him, no one would be called a manager. Instead, he much prefers the term leader. Leaders are people who inspire with clear vision of how things can be done better. Managers muddle. Leaders inspire. Managers slow things down. Leaders spark the business to run smoothly, quickly. Managers talk to one another, write memos to one another. Leaders talk to their employees, talk with their employees, filling them with vision, getting them to perform at levels the employees themselves didn't think possible. Then, and to Welch this is a critical ingredient, they simply get out of the way. Above all else, Welch wants his business leaders to keep things simple. Managing need not be overly complicated, he stresses, because business is actually quite uncomplicated. We've chosen one of the world's most simple professions. Most global businesses have 3 or 4 critical competitors, and you know who they are. And there aren't that many things you can do with a business. It's not as if you're choosing among 2,000 options. To Welch, the secret of running a successful business is to make sure that all key decision-makers in that business have access to the same set of facts. If they have, they will all reach roughly the same conclusion about how to handle a business issue. The problem, says Welch, is that they don't get the same information. They get different pieces of the information pie and are cut off from other vital pieces of information. But even with the same information, might people still come to different conclusions? Very rarely on a quantitative point, says Welch, very rarely on a business situation. I'm not talking about the color of a house or the beauty of a chair. I'm talking about business decisions. Jack Welch, the business leader who is good at keeping things simple, knows just what questions to ask of his subordinates. 1. What does your global competitive environment look like? 2. In the last 3 years, what have your competitors done? 3. In the same period, what have you done to them? 4. How might they attack you in the future? 5. What are your plans to leapfrog over them? That's all managing is, just coming up with the right questions and getting the right answers. Jack Welch has given American business leaders a whole new outlook on how to manage, or, more aptly, how not to manage. In insisting that managing less is managing better, Welch has set an entire new style for the management of large corporations. Of course, the managing less is managing better notion is a paradox, and no one appreciates that more than the chairman of GE. Yet, Jack Welch would never say that managers should not manage at all. What he's really saying to managers is this: don't get bogged down in overmanaging. Manage by creating a vision, and then make sure that your employees run with that vision. That's all there is to it. After all, business isn't really complicated. So lead, don't manage. And don't forget to get out of the way. Chapter 3. Cultivate managers who share your vision. Getting employees excited about their work. That is key to being a great business leader. The way to engender enthusiasm, says Welch, is to allow employees far more freedom and far more responsibility. In 1987, Welch requested a meeting with the head of a particular GE business. The business had produced profits, but it certainly was not setting any records, and Welch had a strong feeling that it could do much better. He hoped that the meeting would lead to improved performance. But Welch's message was lost on the manager. He had no idea what Welch wanted. "Well, help me with that," he pleaded. "Look at my earnings. Look at my return on investment. All the things I'm doing, all the people I've taken on. What the hell do you want me to do?" "I don't know," Welch told him in all honesty. "I just know your business could be doing better." Welch wanted the man to get some vision, to get some enthusiasm for his work and re-energize his employees. Finally, Welch had a proposal for the perplexed manager. "What I'd like you to do is take a month off and just go away. When you come back, act as if you were just assigned to the business and you hadn't been running it for 4 years. Just come in brand new, hold all the reviews, and start slicing everything in a different way." The man still didn't get it. He did not understand that Welch wanted him to rewrite his agenda, take a new look at the business plan, and see things with a fresh eye. The CEO of General Electric didn't think that was asking too much of the man. But the junior executive was clueless. He didn't get Welch's insistence that he become excited about his work, and that he figure out how to energize his troops. 6 months later, the executive no longer worked for GE. Get on board. As far as Jack Welch is concerned, middle managers have to be team members and coaches. They have to facilitate more than control. They should be able to excite and praise people and know when to celebrate. Managers should be energizers, not enervators. Welch gives a hypothetical example. Assume there is a multifunctional business consisting of engineering, marketing, and manufacturing components. And the business has the best manufacturing person it has ever had, someone with excellent numbers who produces high-quality goods on time. But this person won't talk with people in engineering and manufacturing. He won't share ideas with them, and won't behave in a boundaryless way with them. We used to reward this type of person with a bonus because of the good figures. But now we're replacing that person with someone who may not be quite as perfect, but who is a good team player and lifts the team's performance. Maybe the predecessor was working at 100% or 120%, but that person didn't talk with team members. didn't swap ideas. As a result, the whole team was operating at 65%.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?